I don't know the origin of the maxim, truth is stranger than fiction, but regarding the current political campaign, that certainly has taken on the power of prophecy. But then again, fiction enables us to understand the strangeness or to cope with it. Garrison Keillor's writing has had unique and far-reaching impact in the last 3 decades. The sketches, satire, and trademark storytelling that you hear on A Prairie Home Companion, his serious essays, several novels, and the autobiographical Homegrown Democrat attest to an extraordinary creative output. Garrison Keillor's social observations are incisive and memorable. His love of language is palpable. In Homegrown Democrat, he wrote, "The beauty of English is that it has been enriched from below by street patois and criminal lingo and street slang and black English and immigrant languages." It was as a humorist that we came to know Garrison Keillor. His imagination gave birth to a town located only on the radio, but that we choose to revisit weekly. In unity and with pride, we can say we are all Lake Wobegonians. Please welcome Garrison Keillor.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here in Atlanta at your History Center. I apologize for my dress here. This is what you wear when you are determined to not check luggage. So that's why I look the way I do. We're going to get you out of here so that you may watch the debate or listen to the debate tonight, if that is your pleasure. And meanwhile, it's my pleasure not to watch the debate tonight and to hang around with anybody else who does not want to watch the debate tonight. I want to get on to November and get this done, and then see what happens after that. It's a great honor for a writer to appear under the aegis of the Margaret Mitchell House. Margaret Mitchell, who is an inspiration to all first novelists all over America. Think back to Margaret Mitchell and how hard she worked, and with no confidence whatsoever that her work would ever amount to anything. Spent a decade assembling this rather messy manuscript, which a perspicacious editor saw had great possibilities, and convinced her to make some cuts and changes, and it came out and became an instant and immediate bestseller, the first novel to romanticize the lost cause. And this was enormously appealing to people in the dark days, the dark latter days of the Depression, including my mother, who grew up in Minneapolis. She was the child of Scots immigrants, had no connection with the South whatsoever, not an iota, not a skosh, not a single trace of our family came through the South. We all came through the North. We came to Rhode Island and to Connecticut in colonial days. And then because we chose the wrong side, we chose the side of law and order. During the Great Upheaval, my family went into exile in Canada, and we were sentenced to live there for 100 years, and then came to Minnesota after all of the good land had been taken. That's my family history in a nutshell. Nonetheless, my mother adored Gone with the Wind. She read it, and what is more telling, we were fundamentalist people. A woman has come and laid a book at my feet. How good of you. How sweet. I wrote that book. I haven't read it really, but I'm interested in reading it when I get the chance. Even more telling about my family's a fundamentalist family. We come from sanctified brethren. These people looked on Southern Baptists as backsliders. We believed in the literal interpretation of Scripture, that every single word, every jot and every tittle, every comma, every period was inspired of God. And we did not dance, we did not play cards, we did not go to movies, but for Gone with the Wind, my mother made an exception. And she went off to see Clark Gable and Vivian Leigh at the Archaea Orpheum Theater on Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis in 1939, a fact that she confessed to us only 2 years ago. At the age of 92, my mother felt that we were old enough to get this news about her. She had taken my father, and after they had seen Gone with the Wind, then they forbade any of us to ever see movies ever again, or to do anything else interesting whatsoever. A repressive upbringing is very good for an author. It makes you look forward to a day when you will go off and make your own life. It gives you something to rebel against. What the children of liberal parents do, I don't know. I just can't imagine. My people believed in Scripture, and this gave them a passion for the written word. They loved the written word. They loved the King James Bible. They loved the old hymns, which were poetic to them. And this is not lost on a child. They would not have been happy in the praise church of today, these big gymnasiums where people sing 7-11 hymns, where you have 7 words, you sing 11 times. They loved the poetry of old hymns. How tasteless and tedious the hours when Jesus no longer I see. Sweet prospect, sweet birds and sweet flowers have all lost their sweetness. For me, the midsummer sun shines but dim. The fields strive in vain to look gay. But when I am happy in him, December's as pleasant as May was one of my mother's favorite hymns, which means more to somebody from Minnesota than it would to somebody from Georgia, where, of course, you have a paradise down here. We were up there on the northern tier of states out of some vague sense of mission that somebody needed to live there, and God, for some reason, had chosen us to keep the roads plowed, to defend our country against the rapacious Canadian. I grew up with winter, and winter makes a deep impression on a child. Cold houses where if you can't see your breath when you talk, the thermostat gets turned down. Not that we ever talked, we didn't do that, but we respirated from time to time as the need arose. We were sent up to bed, and it was freezing cold up in the attic, in this cold gray room, gray linoleum floors. We didn't thought of bathing or anything. You just went up there and jumped into bed. You just learned to accept yourself as a mammal, and that's what you did. Didn't need to smell like fruit. You just went upstairs and dove in, and there was no thought of bedwetting whatsoever. You just didn't even Didn't even consider that. It would have killed you. Got up in the morning and you put on your heavy clothing, layers and layers of wool. Before the space program gave us lightweight thermal wear, we just kept warm by the exertion of carrying heavy clothing. Something you know nothing about down here. We put on layers of wool and then corduroy and wool sweaters, one after the other, and walked out into a blizzard to go to school, because if you start canceling school in Minnesota, where would you stop? I mean, it's just... So families had more children back then, you know, to have spares, and we went off through a blizzard to school. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. You'd go wait for the bus down at the county road, or the sleigh if the bus couldn't come through. And a man in a black handlebar mustache was there with a sleigh and two black horses with black manes, and he had his reins wound around his forearms and a whip in his whip hand and a big handlebar mustache and a raccoon skin cap, or a raccoon, I don't know what it was. It was out there on his head, and he came sliding up, and we dove in under bearskin rugs, and off we went across wind-crusted snow out on the prairie, absolutely flat, no trees. Of course, the snow was deep. There may have been trees down below. You didn't know, and off you went. And if the runners broke through the crusted snow, then he slid down onto the Mississippi River, and you went up the frozen ice of the river towards school. Every so often he'd swerve to one side or the other to avoid these tattered men in gray who dashed out from behind stones and rocks, the last remnants of the Army of Northern Virginia, trying to snatch little Yankee children to hold us for ransom and get money to buy gunpowder from the British so that the South could rise again. But if the South had risen again, Margaret Mitchell never would have written Gone with the Wind, because it wouldn't have been gone. And so we would not have been here today. Now, this is a comic novel. This does not reflect my upbringing that I can tell. There are no fundamentalists in here. They're just Lutherans, and they fall all over the map theologically. Some are stricter than others. They tend to be dark people who believe that life is suffering, and if it seems easy, be patient, this will pass. My hero is a good man. That's the sort of hero you want. He's a long-standing Wobegonian. His name is Clint Bunsen. He's a staunch Lutheran. He's a good Republican. He is the chairman of the 4th of July committee. He believes in the 4th of July, believes we should observe these holidays and not let them go. Once you start missing out on the details, then you miss out on the big picture. That's his idea. So he puts on a big 4th of July with the Betsy Ross blanket toss in the parade. Men dressed as Minutemen would grab hold of a big canvas blanket, and they tossed this woman wrapped in a flag 20 feet up in the air. And we have a lot of crack drum and bugle corps and Percheron horses, 16 and 32 horse hitches pulling old circus wagons with bands on top of them blazing away, and the FFA precision pitchfork drill team, and marching bell ringers, Lutheran bell ringers who march in formation and play "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God." And the whistling mothers who are all dressed in gray and who whistle, and precision whistling as they go through maneuvers. But this is a man who has been struck by a sudden feeling of dissatisfaction that his life took the wrong turn, and he remembers exactly where it took the wrong turn. Was back when he was getting out of the Navy in San Diego when he was 23 years old, and he wanted to live in California. He loved California, the climate, and tall women playing volleyball on the beach. And he adored California, and he wanted to move there. I mean, he already was there, but he came home to Lake Wobegon to tell them that he wasn't going to come home. And in this contradiction, in this foolishness, he lost his way in life. He came through Durango, Colorado, and he thought, why am I doing this? Why am I going home when I don't want to go home? So he called up his mother on the phone from a gas station in Durango, and he had a story made up that he was going to start a job on Monday, and he'd promised them that he'd be there on Monday, so he couldn't come home. But when she picked up the phone, he no longer had the courage to lie to her. And so he said, I'm sort of thinking I won't come home until Christmas, which was pathetic, to ask your parent for permission to run away. And she said, oh, darling, we just couldn't stand that. We couldn't stand that. If you didn't come home now, Daddy needs you. Daddy's not feeling well. We need you at the garage, the Ford agency, Bunsen Motors. And so he headed north. And then in Lincoln, Nebraska, he stops at the Cornhusker Hotel, and he thinks, I just can't go. I can't go home. I don't want to be there. I want to be in California. So he calls, but nobody answers. And because there was no voicemail back then, there were no answering machines that anybody had, he's not able to leave the message and say, I'm sorry, I'm having car problems, and I just have to go back to California. And I'll write you a letter, and I'm so sorry, and I'll call you later. Bye. He can't do that. So for want of voicemail, he is doomed to spend the rest of his life in Lake Wobegon. And now he's in his early 60s. And now he can see the end coming at the age of 62. He can imagine a time when you're unable to remember the names for common things, and then you can't remember the names of people who are looking at you with pity in their eyes. And you don't remember who this is who's taking the car keys away from you. And then you think you're only going to visit the Good Shepherd home, but you find out you're going to live there for a while. And you wander through the hall in pea-stained pajamas and trying to keep your sphincter shut and eating the worst food you've had since junior high school. And then the shades of night fall, and you die, much to your relief, until these people come from the mortuary who you never cared for, and they haul you down there, and they bathe your naked body, and they cut your throat and your wrists and your ankles, and they pump you full of this chemical, which tastes terrible. And they stuff you into a navy blue suit that you used to wear to other people's funerals. And they put you in a box, and your family comes, and they don't grieve for you as much as you wish they would. These are northern people. These are restrained, stoical people. They bear up much too well under the shock of your demise. Your beloved daughters, they don't throw themselves down on your coffin the way you sort of wish that they would. They just don't do that. They don't fall down and say, no, Daddy, no. They don't do that. They just kind of dab at their noses like they had hay fever or something. And then you go up to the Lutheran church and you're lying there, and this minister gives the standard sermon about the corruptible putting on the incorruptible. And people you barely knew stand up and tell heartwarming stories about little unsung acts of kindness on your part that never took place. And then they haul you out to the hearse, and you think, this is my last car ride. I thought there were going to be more, a lot more. I wanted to drive across Wyoming one more time. But there is no more for you, and they drive you up to the top of the hill. And the pallbearers haul you out, and over rough ground you go bouncing And they set you down on this brass rail, and the minister reads a little prayer off an index card. How much effort does that take? And the audience sings "Abide with Me, Fast Falls the Eventide," a hymn you never cared for. And they go away and they leave you there, except for the cemetery committee, which stands around and talks about drainage and about leakage problems. And now you got one more thing to think about. And then the undertaker takes away the plastic grass, and the gravediggers come, and one of them thumps your coffin hard with his knuckles, and he says, "That son of a bitch, Clint Bunsen, sold me the worst car I ever had in my life." 68 Falcon, took that in for servicing 5 times, it just got worse and worse and worse. And you feel your coffin being lowered at high speed. Whoa! Bam! Down into the vault, and the lid comes down. Whoa! And the dirt comes down, and you lie there with your hands folded over your abdomen for a long time. Who knows how long? Is it a week? Is it a month? It's hard to tell. Thank goodness you were brought up Lutheran, and you were brought up to wait your turn, to wait, not to be anxious that people should come and see to your needs, just wait your turn. And of course, to God, a century is just a minute, and so you may have a while to wait. He can see the end, and now he looks at the young woman playing the Statue of Liberty in the 4th of July parade, and he feels a great urge toward life. Some would call it lust, but a great urge to live part of his life all over again. And that is the essence of this story. This urge is very strong in Lake Wobegon, even for people, or especially for people who were brought up fundamentalist and who were trained to wait for the second coming, and then our pleasures would begin. It hit all of us. It hit us in junior high school when we were first taught poetry. Our parents trusted the schools back then, and our teachers taught us the Elizabethan poets. They taught us Christopher Marlowe, "Come live with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove that this brief summer yields," which means more in Minnesota than it does in Georgia. Meant more to the Elizabethans, for whom summer was very brief indeed. Life expectancy was in the mid-40s back then. It made a big impression on me when I was 13. Christopher Marlowe's "Come Live With Me." My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. All of these poets who told us the same thing, to seize this life and to live it right now. This is a great gift. We must take hold of it, even at the risk of disappointing the people around us. We must be adventurous in behalf of living life. That was the poet's message. It was also the message of rock and roll, which came in when I was a kid, a little kid. We listened to the radio up in that cold room upstairs, crawling under the covers with a radio receiver. This was before the transistor radio. We had the vacuum tube radio, which gave off heat. So you took it under the covers and you lay there on a January night in Minnesota and you perspired as you listened to those singers. They were all from the South, not a single one of them from the North that meant anything to us. We listened to Elvis from Memphis and Little Richard, and we listened to Jerry Lee Lewis, and what they had to say was the same as what Christopher Marlowe had to say, and Robert Burns and E.E. Cummings. You shook my mind, you twisted my mind, you shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much love drives a man insane. You broke my will, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. I looked at love and I thought it was funny. You came along, you moved me, honey. I changed my mind. This love is fine. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Ooh, kiss me, baby. Feels good. Oh, I want to love you like a lover should. So fine, so fine. I want to tell the world that you're mine, 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 mine. Ooh. I chew my nails and I twiddle my thumbs. I'm real nervous, but it sure is fun. Ooh, baby, you're driving me crazy. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Ow, ow. Same as E.E. Cummings, the very same thing. E.E. Cummings wrote it a little differently, not as... you couldn't dance to E.E. Cummings. He wrote, since feeling is first, who pays any attention to the syntax of things will never wholly kiss you. Wholly to be a fool while spring is in the world, my blood approves. Exactly what Jerry Lee has been saying all those years. Don't cry. The best gesture of my brain is less than your eyelids flutter, which says we are for each other. So laugh, leaning back in my arms. For life's not a paragraph, and death, I think, is no parenthesis. Well, let me just read you a few paragraphs. Then, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them up. 6 a.m. on the 4th of July, and the chairman of the day had gotten 2 phone calls already, and had smoked one of his 10 allotted smokes, and was about to light the second. He sat on the front steps, the smell of coffee and flowers in the air. He had made love to his indifferent wife the night before, and he'd done a good job of it, and made her cry out his name and say a vulgar word over and over that she seldom ever said. And that was an accomplishment. And now he sat on his front steps in his pajamas, cigarette and coffee in hand, studying the sky, a few high wisps of cloud to the north, like patches of oatmeal in a blue bowl. He hadn't slept well at all, and then at midnight he turned to his old wife and snaked his foot over and touched hers, and she said, "What?" He said, "You're very lovely, you know that?" She sighed a weary sigh, but he persevered and stroked her hair, kissed her freckled shoulders and breasts, touched all the switches. It was like starting a car on a cold morning. And in the end, she was on her hands and knees, thrusting her bare rump at him. How refreshing to hear her cry out in passion, the matron of the church kitchen. Sharp-tongued Irene of the rhubarb patch, crying out, "Oh, Christ," as he dashed steaming around third base toward home, and the crowd rose to its feet. And in he came sailing into home, and she whinnied with joy, and he collapsed on her, and they lay there exhaling for a few minutes. "It's been a long time," she said. She kissed him on the neck. "Put your arm around me," she said. He did. "What are you thinking?" "Thinking about you." "Not thinking about your girlfriend?" "No." And he wasn't, not until she mentioned it. "Do you still love me?" He said, yes, he did. "Do you really? Are you sure?" Yes, he said. He really was, though he wasn't completely sure, now that she asked. But what could he say? Maybe, let me think about it. And then she'd have you in counseling, and you'd lose your Wednesday nights for a while. No, making love was the right thing. Go on the offensive, secure the beachhead, and short-circuit those questions women drive you nuts with. Do you love me? Do you think we have a good marriage? Why don't we spend more time together? So he took care of that, and she rolled over, and she started snoring, and he lay awake, looking at the ceiling, thinking about his heart. He slept for a while until raccoons woke him up at 2. 2 big males rolling the garbage can down the driveway like patrons at a buffet. And he ran them off, and then he saw Miss Simpson across the alley up in her bathroom, God help us, taking a shower, the window half open, her bare back quite visible in the mist. And he stood pondering whether to warn her that her window was open and any yahoo could observe her. And then she turned toward the window to rinse her back, and he decided not to. Then, after lusting after the flat chest of a math teacher, he listened to Party Line on WDUL, and TJ was yakking about spiders and how the average person eats 13 spiders in a lifetime, and more if you snore. They tiptoe along your lips in the night. They're attracted to saliva. And if you snore, the intake will suck them in. And as you swallow them, they empty their bowels, which is that bitter taste you wake up with in the morning. Which is why men drink whiskey for breakfast. And also to kill off spider toxins that can trigger hormonal changes in men. The poisons a spider kills houseflies with may take the lead out of your pencil. One caller said, I maybe shouldn't be saying this, but I gotta wonder if homosexuality may not be caused by eating spiders. TJ poo-pooed that, but another caller said, no, my brother-in-law had an infestation of spiders one spring, and within weeks he was dating a man named Sean. A very nice man, don't get me wrong, but nevertheless, after that there was no sleep for Clint. He watched 3 and 4 o'clock click over on the digital clock radio, and he heard the voice of his old dad say, look out, a beautiful summer day. It may turn out badly. Somebody could drown. It happens. He got up and he walked out down to the end of the yard and into Irene's garden. Pole beans and tomatoes and the cucumber vines, peppers and radishes. A tribe of crows had taken up lodging in a red oak tree behind the Lutheran church who were just starting to murmur now. And they sounded like old men stirring in their sleep. He listened to the crows, and he could hear Daddy's voice, and then Uncle Jack's. And Daddy was telling his Mexican girlfriend how much he loved her. And Jack looked down at Clint, and he complained, geez, Clinty, I was only 54 when I died. What kind of a deal is that? Got divorced from Dot and looked forward to a new life, and wham, liver cancer. Me, Mr. Eagle Scout. I never drank. Wasted years, Clinty. Wasted years. Damn it to hell when I think of the hours I spent watching golf on TV. Help me, Clint. Help me. I'm not done. I'm not done. I want to come back. Please pray for my return to earth. Being a crow is a lousy way to end up. Tell God I deserve better. He sat in the tree, muttering to himself, and Clint went back indoors. Well, I don't want to read too much of it. It's such a short novel, you know. It's Are there any questions from this fine audience of book readers and literate people. Of course, always hesitation to be the first person to ask a question because people expect so much of the first question. They expect it to be profound. Here's a gentleman right here.
Could you give a thought and give us a sense of how you are perceiving the big political things going on out there from where you are?
Could I, the gentleman asks, emphasizing the could I give you my impression of the big picture, the big political picture? Are you asking me this because I write a column in the newspaper, or because I'm older than you? Probably because I'm older than you. You think I have a clue about the big picture? I'm just an old guy from Minnesota. I am a man who has lived a very lucky life. I never searched for myself. I found myself in rebellion against my parents. And I knew from the time I was 13 that I wanted to be a writer. And that's what I've done. And for some reason, it's as interesting to me now as it was when I was 13. So what does politics mean to somebody who is doing what he loves doing, which only requires a legal pad and a sharpened pencil? This person is not really sailing the same rough seas that other people are sailing. So I can't claim to understand. There are people who are in trouble who understand much better than I do. And so my answer would be some sort of airy, northern liberal elitist answer. And who needs that? I was up in Alaska a couple of weeks ago. I was on a bike trail. It was a big moment for me. I saw a moose. There were two moose on the trail, a cow and a calf. They were 20 feet away. And I thought to myself, being in Alaska, I thought, under the Bush doctrine, I have the right to kill both of them. But, like a lot of northern liberals, I was not carrying a rifle at the time. And so I didn't. And those moose live. I assume they live to this day, and I wish for the same for the rest of you. Yes, here's a gentleman. A microphone, my goodness.
Mr. Keillor, first of all, I thank you for your columns on Salon.com and your book on the Democrat. But my question is coming from a young journalist to a seasoned, accomplished writer, and that is on the subject of criticism. And I suppose it could apply to not just someone like you, but any public figure, whether it's a university president or whoever. And that is, how do you handle the subject of criticism, and not constructive criticism, but really destructive criticism, the anonymous blogs, the unsigned letters to the editor, the really vicious, hysterical Fox News type of... I mean, do you treat it as water off a duck's tail feathers, or is it more of a psychopharmacological thing you have to take? How do you deal with that?
You lead a sheltered life. You don't read everything available, and you do not ever go online and Google yourself. That's I wrote a poem about that. The secret of a long career is to keep chugging and never fade and not think about your reputation for 1 minute. It's like becoming the tallest boy in the 6th grade. You stick around and you're bound to win it. And you never ever Google yourself, ever. And you never read anything that's written about yourself. What are you going to learn from something that's written about you? Nothing. So seldom would you ever learn anything. So you just don't. You avoid all of that, and you save yourself an enormous amount of misery. Okay? That's my advice to you. But I'm all in favor of anonymous blogs and vicious criticism and slander and libel of big people, big well-known people. I'm all in favor of it. Yes, yes.
In addition to that fine advice, if you could somehow visit yourself when you were starting out as a writer, if you could step into a time machine and visit young Garrison Keillor, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
Don't major in English. Learn a trade. Learn a trade. Pick up carpentry. You can take carpentry anywhere in this country. You can live anywhere in this country and earn a living. And if you are good with your hands, it doesn't matter what your politics are. A construction crew is the most democratic unit in this country. You can be a right-wing redneck. You can be a communist. As long as you can carry your share of the work and do good work, you're okay. You can listen to heavy metal, or you can be listening to Willie Nelson. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When you major in English, you are going down a labyrinth that you don't realize when you're that age. What a writer needs, I mean, if you're going to teach English, of course you major in English. But what a writer needs is to get out and see the world, and to see people, and to have experiences. And you don't get that in 4 years trotting around from the 19th century novel to 18th century poetry to modern American fiction, and trotting around and doing that.
Thank you.
A writer always takes this risk that you may be wasting your entire life. Margaret Mitchell took that risk, and she sat down and she wrote her story without any guarantee whatsoever that it would ever amount to anything. So as long as you're taking that risk, what's another risk? And just to live a free life, and to go around and see things. Avoid MFA programs, and don't major in English. That's what I wish. Yes, sir.
Welcome back to Atlanta,
Thank you.
the Olympic city.
Yeah?
I just wanted to know if there were any Olympians that had inspired your writing over the years, or if you had a favorite Olympic story of your own.
Olympians, you mean athletes?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Oh. Well, I've never actually been to an Olympics, and I lost the TV habit somewhere back around 30 years ago, and I just have never been able to pick it up again. And so I lead a strange life in a way. I lead a life more like my grandmother's than like yours in that respect. I've just got out of the habit of watching television, and now I wouldn't know how to do it. I honestly wouldn't. If you told me to go home and watch the Olympics, if you had told me, I wouldn't have known really how to work the remote or where to sit. My daughter could have, but she's 10 and her bedtime is early. So
Very good.
I have to pass on your question.
All right, thank you.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes, I was just wondering if you think that if Paul Wellstone, the senator of Minnesota, had lived, do you think he would have gotten the Democratic nomination for president in 2004?
No, I don't. Senator Wellstone took a stab at running for president, and he concluded wisely, I think, after a short time, that he was, as he said himself, he was too liberal, he was too Jewish, and he was too short. Short people tend not to do well running for president. American people seem to like to elect somebody of average or greater height. Michael Dukakis was the last short person, I believe, to run for office. Ronald Reagan was taller than Jimmy Carter. I could go on. No, I don't think Paul Wellstone would have come close. I don't think he would even have tried. Okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you for coming
Good
to
evening.
Georgia.
My pleasure.
I grew up in Georgia. Ms. Mitchell is a hero. When I was 13, my mother said, "Jenny, it's time. You can read Gone with the Wind now." So it was a rite of passage for me to read Gone with the Wind. Was there a book for you that was special, or a turning corner book, or something that you read as a young person that you still refer back to?
Well, I of course, was brought up reading the good book, and whatever my teachers assigned me to read in school. But I think an enormous moment for me was when I went to a newsstand in downtown Minneapolis, and I was 13 years old, and I bought with my own money a copy of the New Yorker magazine. It cost 35 cents or 25, I can't remember. And it had on the cover was a picture of a man, a sort of countryman, a wealthy countryman, and a maid was straddling his right leg and pulling his boot off, and he had his other boot up against her rump. And but inside the magazine was a short story by John Cheever. There was an article by the great A.J. Liebling on boxing. He wrote a series called The Sweet Science. There was an essay by E.B. White, a letter from Maine by E.B. White, and there was S.J. Perlman. And here were writers whom I had admired, especially E.B. White and S.J. Perlman, and they were in a magazine that you could buy cheap and for the price of 5 candy bars, and to see them in a periodical form, not bound up in a book, but that writing of a high literary quality could be done by journalists, which were what they were doing here, made an enormous impression on me. And of course, it was the New Yorker magazine as well, and the advertisements were for a life that was alien to us in the Midwest. A life of jaguars and baccarat crystal and so forth, and expensive resorts in Florida. But the writing was what appealed to me, and to be in a magazine format, it just knocked me out. And I knew then, when I was 13, what I wanted to do. It was 1969. I sent a story to the New Yorker in the mail, addressed to the editors, the New Yorker, 25 West 43rd Street, New York, New York, 10036. And they bought a story of mine, which really changed my life. So picking up that magazine changed my life. I wrote a sonnet about this. Bryn Mawr girl in the plaid skirt and the sweater set, working at the New Yorker in the summer of '69, reading unsolicited stories and smoking a cigarette. Thank you, my darling, for rescuing mine. You gave it your blessing in the form of a green slip telling the editor to read it, and he read it, and your gift of attention launched my little ship off in the direction in which it still is headed. Years have passed since you saved me from a life of drudgery, my sweet, and I often bless your unknown name who gave me that chance, my angel of 25 West 43rd Street. I have done some good work, Lord knows I have tried, and yet the importance of angels cannot be denied, was my sonnet. Yes, my dear.
I received your advice too late, and I was an English major.
You need my advice about? You've already gone and done it.
I've already gone and done it, unfortunately.
So how's that working out for you?
Not so well so far.
Good. Okay. All right.
But I wanted to know.
So are you going to wait on table? Have you?
Oh, I've done that already.
You've done that. Okay. All right. All right.
I just wanted to know. I mean, you produce a radio show, or you write for a radio show weekly.
Right.
Where do you come up with the inspiration week after week?
Necessity. A deadline. I've been off most of this summer. I did a show at the Minnesota State Fair over Labor Day weekend, but we'll start up our regular season on the 4th of October, Saturday. And I have not an idea in my head right now. What Guy Noir should do, or Dusty and Lefty, or what's happening in Lake Wobegon. I don't have a single notion, but I can guarantee you that on the Wednesday before the Saturday, I will start thinking in some determined, organized way, and by Thursday morning, I will be making notes. I will have a yellow legal pad out, and I will be writing down things, and by Friday morning, I will be typing at a laptop computer, because the actors will be coming in for a rehearsal on Friday in the late afternoon, probably about 4:30. And so around noon on Friday, I will have some stuff. And if I don't, I will be really sweating. But I'll make it. I will make it. I've been doing this for 35 years, and so I will make it, but sometimes it comes right up to broadcast. And sometimes on the broadcast, actors can feel my right hand snaking over their shoulder and crossing out some lines. This is why we do a live broadcast, see, dear, is because if we taped this in a studio and you had all the time in the world, it would never ever get done. I would never ever have a deadline. It would drive me crazy. It would take up my entire life, just listening to tape over and over and over, editing, doing 6, 8, 9 takes of a script, never quite getting it right. I would spend my entire life doing that radio show instead of having it be the nice little part-time job it is. See? Okay. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Keillor, and thanks for letting us see you and meet you with the face and body that goes with that wonderful voice.
Good to see you.
Yeah, but I'm from Wisconsin, and I can't help that.
Well,
and I'm sure I have no standing to ask this question.
You look pretty skinny for somebody from Wisconsin.
Well, you see, thank you. But the thing, I was going to mention that your head looks very, very good.
Oh, good.
Very nice.
Good, thank you.
See, the thing about Minnesota, do you take the broccoli or eat the broccoli? Remember eat the broccoli or take the broccoli? Remember the transparent head story?
No.
You can't remember.
No, I don't.
We can't keep up with the reruns. It was last Sunday.
I've written
It was
I would
great.
rather forget.
Fair enough.
You just walk away from it. We eat broccoli.
Okay.
Yeah. What's the alternative?
If you don't, your head gets transparent.
Oh, I see.
This was the cure offered.
Oh, this was a story I told.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't expect you to remember everything.
Okay. No, I don't remember it because I got accusatory letters from parents. for planting ideas in their children's heads.
George Bush's father, too?
Yes, right. So it was a painful episode. I hate to come athwart parents on our show. Since I am one myself, I know what parents are up against.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from this? Yes, sir. A patient man who's been waiting his turn.
I'd like to thank you once again for your radio show. My question is, how did you enjoy doing the movie Prairie Home Companion, and will you be gracing the silver screen once again in the near future?
Will I be grazing on the silver screen?
Gracing.
Gracing. I'm not sure I graced it the first time. I was a man who was seriously out of his element. I had a wonderful time. The movie that was made was more Mr. Altman's idea than it was mine. I knew somebody in Chicago who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew Robert Altman. And so by networking, I got to go have dinner with him in Chicago. He was old, and as I could see when I met him, he was not feeling well. He was, I didn't know this at the time, under treatment for bladder cancer, and his heart, which was a transplanted heart, was giving him some problems. But this was a man who never intended to retire, ever, and so he was looking for his next project. I pitched him an idea, a story to take place in Lake Wobegon, a little town in the Midwest, in January, when a man who has moved away to New York returns to Lake Wobegon for his father's funeral. Mr. Altman listened to this idea for about 45 seconds, and he let me know he had no interest in making a movie that he'd have to shoot on location in the winter. He'd left Kansas City a long time ago and had no wish to return. And B, he had no interest in making a movie about the death of an old man. He said, the death of an old man is not a tragedy, a line which I then later used in the movie that we did make. He wanted to make a movie about a radio show, so I went along with that. If Robert Altman wants to make a movie with you, you may not have another chance. So why negotiate? I went ahead and I wrote it. He was a good man who loved movie making. He was a very sick old man, but once he got into production, he seemed to be in his mid-20s again. He loved sitting in a big canvas chair behind the cameras and looking at his bank of monitor screens. He just adored making movies. It struck me as I got to know Mr. Altman a little better that this was all set in motion when he was 17 years old. He was in military academy in Kansas City. World War II began. He lied about his age, said he was 19, joined the Army Air Force, learned to fly, became the pilot of a B-24 bomber, and flew 37 missions in the South Pacific. A kid, he was 22 years old, and he was flying missions against Japanese installations in this enormous, loud, rattling, freezing cold piece of machinery, commanding a crew of 6 men who were mostly older than he. Once you've done that and survived that, what do you have to fear after that? He feared nothing. He especially did not fear failure. He was the first person I ever met who never thought a thing about failure, one bit. He looked back on his own movies and he loved them all. And he never would love one more than the other. He loved making them, and that's what counted to him. He was a pure artist, and it was the greatest privilege to hang out with him, and with all of those actors who made that movie because they knew it might very well be his last, and they wanted to work with Robert Altman. That was true of Kevin Kline, and was true of Meryl Streep, and also was true of Lindsay Lohan. And they all just wanted to work for him. It was a lot of fun. The script was a mess. He allowed me, thank goodness, to revise it as he was shooting, which no other director in Christendom would have allowed. And he allowed me to come in the morning before they shot, and they hand out the script for the day, the scenes that they're going to shoot, and I crossed out lines, I rewrote lines. The actors, bless their hearts, didn't say a word, even though they'd rehearsed what I had written before. I got to rewrite everything on the spot. And so it was an experience unlike anything I'll ever do again, I'm sure. So why would I want to go back and do it again if it wasn't going to be as good as it was with Robert Altman? That's the question I ask myself. Nonetheless, I'm working on a screenplay, but so is everybody else. Everybody else. Yes, sir.
Mr. Keillor, I'm not a member of the security team. I'm a big fan of yours.
You are?
And I want to thank you for a great cast on A Prairie Home Companion. I love Sue Scott,
Yes.
Tim Russell, and I love to hear Garrison Keillor sing. And I wanted to know, where did you come up with the idea, and would you share a few stories about Ruth Harrison, reference librarian, and Guy Noir, private eye?
Ruth Harrison, reference librarian, came about through conversations with a friend of mine who just recently retired as a reference librarian from the University of Minnesota, Marcia Pancake. And she just loved being a librarian, but she also thought it was very, very funny, some of the librarians in her department who fit so well the stereotype of librarians, fussy, neurotic people with their glasses on a chain around their neck, wearing crepe-soled shoes. And so I made those series of little sketches, Ruth Harrison, and got so many complaints from librarians that I put it aside. Guy Noir, Private Eye simply is a takeoff from detective shows that were on the radio when I was a kid, and to some extent from the Raymond Chandler novels and the hard-boiled school of fiction, and the wonderful metaphors that were permitted to people who wrote genre detective fiction that were not permitted to us English majors. We were not allowed to write like that. So Guy Noir is my chance to write like that. She gave me a look so sweet you could have poured it on your pancakes.
Oh yeah,
she was tall, and she was beautiful, and her jeans were so tight I could read the embroidery on her underwear. It said Tuesday. See, we couldn't write like that as English majors. We had to write about alienation and about despair. But you get to a certain age and you're tired of writing stories about alienation and people looking out the window at a backyard that's littered with trash and looking at a gray sky and wondering what is the point of it all. At some point, you want to write about a beautiful woman walking through the door who has extremely tight jeans on and who has wonderful bone structure. It was liberation. All right, yes. Do I have a question here? Yes.
You were talking about me just then, right?
Yes, I see that.
And I would say, don't ask me to stand up because I am. A few years ago, you indulged a few of us Southerners in a sing-along, a hymn sing-along. at the Lutheran Church in St. Paul.
Uh-huh.
And you've got a lot of Southerners here tonight. Some of us are native and some are transplants, but I thought it'd be a great way to sort of wrap up the evening if you would lead us in song. And I don't know what you're going to do about this poor guy right here, but the lady back there told me to tell you I was the last one.
Which one? The last? This is the last one.
Well, he is now, but before me he wasn't.
Right, okay.
Okay, will you lead us in a song?
So, of course, but shall I take one more question here, or is there a...
Yes, one more.
Does the gentleman have a... Yes, sir.
There is a...
You want to turn that microphone up in towards you? Yeah?
I just always wanted to know if there was any truth to the story about your first novel and its fate on the train.
Yes, I wrote a story for the New Yorker magazine about the Grand Ole Opry, and with the money that I was paid for it, I took my wife and small child on a train trip out west. The train was derailed at Sandpoint, Idaho, and they sent a bus to take us down to Portland, Oregon, where we would catch the Coast Starlight train heading south down the coast. And there, in the train station in Portland, I took my little boy into the men's room, and seeing to him, I forgot all about my brand new leather briefcase. I left it there in the men's room. I left it there for no more than about 10 minutes, but when I came back, it was gone. And inside the briefcase was the manuscript of a novel, I believe it was. It was the beginning of a novel about a small town in Minnesota. And I was so distraught, I walked for blocks around the Portland train station, thinking that whoever stole it must have discarded it when they discovered that it just had a bunch of papers in it. But I couldn't find it in any trash barrels, and the Coast Starlight had arrived from Seattle, and so I got on board the train. I was so disturbed at having lost it that I completely forgot it. You see, if you should lose a manuscript, and I've done this since then, if you lose something on a computer screen and it just goes away, you don't anguish over it for 1 second. You sit down and you write it again, and you discover that you will write it better the second time than it was the first time. It will always be an improvement. But I anguished over it, and so it was completely gone.
Had you not heard of carbon paper?
I was writing by hand on a legal pad, and so the whole thing was gone. Yes, I had heard of carbon paper, but it was gone. But half the people in this room have not heard of carbon paper. So, all right. Very good. Well, I think a 7-Eleven sort of a hymn might be the best, because you probably come from all sorts of backgrounds, and we know all sorts of different things, and I don't want you to have to worry about the lyrics. How about we just find a chord? I'm sorry, what? Yes, of course we can sing the doxology, but it's only 4 lines, my dear, and so it would be over much too soon. We have other words that we sing up north to the doxology as a table grace. We sing sort of a Lutheran table grace. Oh, Lord, we thank thee for this food, for every pleasure, every good. But I don't think that you know those words here. Let's sing Daniel in the Lion's Den. Maybe you. Let's find a chord here. Basses. So how does that go anyway? Oh, Daniel in the lion's den. Oh, Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel in the lion's den. Oh, now is the needed time. Oh, now it's coming back to me. Now is the needed. Lord, won't you come down here? Should we set it higher, little by higher? Lord, won't you come down here? Oh, Lord, won't you come down here? Lord, won't you come down here? Oh, now is the needed time. Oh, now is the needed time. Lord, won't you come down here? Need more parts. Oh, Lord, He sent His angel down. Oh, Lord, He sent His angel down. Lord, He sent His angel down here. Oh, now is the needed time. Oh, now is the needed time. Now is the needed time. Oh, Lord, won't you come down here? Oh, Lord, won't you come down here? Lord, won't you come down here? Come down here. Oh, now is the needed time. Oh, now is the needed time. Lord, won't you come down here? Daniel in the lion's den. 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 Oh, look at Daniel now. Is the needed time. Now is the needed time. Now, don't you need it? Down. The angels shut the lions' mouths. The angels shut the lions' mouths. The angels shut the lions' mouths. Angels shut the lion mouth. Whoa, 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 whoa. Now is the needed time. Oh, now is the needed time. Now is the needed time. Let's find our cars and go home. Oh, let's find our cars and go home. Oh, let's find our cars and go home. Let's find our cars and go home. Let's go home. Oh, now is the needed time. Oh, now is the needed time. Now is the needed time. Let's sing one more verse. Oh, let's sing one more verse. Oh, let's sing one more verse. Let's sing one more verse. One more verse. Oh, now is the needed time. Oh, now is the needed time. Now is the needed time. Amen.